Hello and welcome if you're new. In today's video, we're going to do a finance talk, and unfortunately today I don't have much to show you, so we're just going to talk. So for starters, there's been I've been a stay-at-home mom for the last couple of years, and have not been able to really keep just a regular on the clock job because of just childcare needs, and and my husband has worked full time for most of that time for the finances. And yeah, as you could see, our expenses for the last few years have just skyrocketed. They're just they're just different. I mean, we're just getting used to them, and just so many things have changed in such a short amount of time that I feel like just now starting to kind of be at peace with them and start to feel a little more settled in. Yeah. So there's a couple of things I wanted to talk about. I have tried to bring in income over the last couple of years, but it just didn't really work out for us. It just worked out best for my husband to work full time and just for me to take care of the house and all the things that are around the house. When we did first move in, I did get a part-time job just to kind of help us out a little bit. But when my husband got the job he's working at now, because we were both working part-time, and we as a team recognized that was just something we did not like, we did not want to do. It just was causing too much just tension and frustration in the house, and it just didn't seem that worth it because it wasn't giving us all that much working like that, because him working one full-time job rather than us working two part-time jobs, he makes so much more, so to speak. So I left the part-time. It was just a part-time like morning stalker job. I left that, and he went and got a full-time job, which I mean, it pays really well. We just weren't really sure what to do with the income for the longest time, in the sense of that we didn't really track our expenses. We just were overwhelmed by new life expenses that it just got blown way out of proportion. So that's something that we're working on. We are aware of our responsibility in it, and we are aware that some of it was out of our control, and that was something that we talked about last time. So some of the ways that I have attempted to bring in some income just to kind of help ease the burden was first that part-time job before he was able to go get this full-time job. But I left that, and he got this full-time job, which paid a lot more than us both working and just trying to juggle the schedules. It just worked so much better that way. After that, once he was working there, I did start working with laundry care, which when my child was small, it wasn't too bad when she was a little bit younger. But I just, for myself, it was bringing in a little bit of income, which was nice. But for myself, I found it to be really difficult, and just really, frankly, not worth it for me, because it was just getting really difficult, especially with the hotter seasons and having to kind of bring my child around with me. She was fine. She was content with it until she got a little bit older. She started talking and getting angry with me. Yeah, she was fine. I have done Instacart before, and that was pretty nice, but it became really difficult later on because it just they made it in a certain way so that people can make more money and stuff like that. I'm sure it's working a lot better now, but for me, it made it more difficult for me, and just not worth it. Not worth it. It just doesn't work for me to bring my child all over the place. And then not only that, it was also causing a lot of extra wear on the car, which we really did not like. We did not want the car to wear out, especially we started having some car issues, and our car is a manual car. So the second gear on it is starting to wear out. So we're going to have to consider trying to save up to get some new the shifts. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, to be honest. Um, so, yes. So driving the car around so much wasn't worth it for me. It wasn't worth it for my husband because it was just easier for us to try to cut back and to just try to live off of his income that he was bringing in. Something else that I did try to do, which was working pretty well for a minute, but just the expenses of trying to do it and the expenses of how much income I was making for it just wasn't leveling out for me last year. I started a small handmade business. I like to make soaps. I would like to get into making maybe t-shirts and maybe expanding on some other things, but obviously I need to get one thing right first before moving on, you know. So I did start making handmade goods, and I started going to craft events and vendor events, like farmers markets, and that was working really well. I had to stop doing it because I had some health issues. I had to slow down, and it was just a little bit too much for me. So that's something I'm looking to get back into. But something that didn't work out last year for me with that is the expenses to kind of get started was a lot more than what I was able to bring in for the year. Because I had to buy for the events, I had to buy tables, I had to buy a shade canopy. For the outdoor events, I had to buy like tablecloths just to make it look nice. I had to buy a card reader so that people who didn't have cash would be able to pay me through Square. Um, and then just a display. Obviously, you want it to look nice, which I went to a thrift store and I just found some secondhand baskets and stuff. And then that was pretty much all I did for my display, which it was good. It wasn't my favorite, but having to lug around folding 6-foot folding tables and a large canopy was really difficult. What I love is using a wagon, but the wagon I have is just really cheap. It was a really cheap one that I found on Amazon. I think it was about $70. It was like the cheapest one I could find on Amazon. And yeah, it was really difficult. Um, and that's the hard part with the events is because some of them are so worth it. Some of them you can make a good amount of money from. They're kind of set up sort of like how a yard sale would operate, but a little bit more put together, I'd say. Um, and if you're going to outdoor events, it's a little bit more difficult than indoor events because the outdoor events are hotter. You have the elements to worry about to make sure that your products aren't getting destroyed. Um, so there's just a lot of variables with the outdoor events. Because the changing seasons change from what you need, and you also need to take care of yourself because a lot of times if it's too cold and you're out there, you're freezing. If it's too hot, you're out there, you're getting dehydrated. So there's just a lot of variables with the events and farmers markets. So yeah, and some of them are worth it. You can make a good amount of money off of them. The problem is that sometimes the cost you pay for your spot, um, sometimes you don't make your money back, and that's just, you have to just accept the loss. So then it's a little bit of a gamble. So it's good to figure out which ones will work. And that's something I want to get back into. And maybe even selling handmade goods like online through Etsy or through Spotify, or not Spotify, Shopify, something like that. That's something I'm looking into, but it's just a little bit nerve-wracking to get into it because either way of the spectrum, it's uncomfortable because if I sell online, that I'm going to have to deal with creating a shop online and kind of figuring out how to work through that. And if I wanted to go to the events, then I'm going to have to kind of get uncomfortable with the hot weather and lug around tables and all that. So I did find an event that is set to be inside, which I think I might go ahead and go for that. I'm still a little bit, I guess I'm still a little bit nervous on whether or not I can handle it, but at the same time, I know that if I don't start somewhere, I'm never going to start. So that's kind of the struggle for me right now, is kind of getting over myself. And also obviously, like talking with my husband to ensure that our schedules line up, because yeah, I definitely don't want to add pressure onto him, when he's already, feeling overwhelmed with the amount of work he has at work. So that's a big thing. I want to make sure that I'm being considerate of him, but I'm also want to make sure that I'm not just making excuses to not do something, So I don't know. I don't know which one it really is, but that's something I would like to get into. A different way that I had found that I wanted to get into, but I'm having a lot of difficulties getting into right now, is the Amazon reviews. I've heard a lot of people talk about Amazon reviews being really good, but with Amazon reviews, from what I can gather, is you need to have a certain level of following on a social media platform in order to be able to be like eligible. And I don't really know what that requirement is because it doesn't really tell me. And I've gone through the process of becoming an Amazon affiliate, which is just that I can earn some commission if people buy some of the products off of the links that I post. But um, that is not really an income. It's more so kind of like a passive thing that you could potentially make something off. I haven't really made anything off of it. I think there's like maybe $1 available, but I don't think you can cash out $1 until it hits at least $10 or $20. You can't cash it out until it hits a certain amount, but that's kind of a more passive background thing. From what I understood, to become an Amazon reviewer, you have to become an Amazon influencer and make a storefront. But to become an Amazon influencer, you have to do a certain level of, you already have to have a certain platform of people following you and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't really have that. That's kind of what led me to YouTube, is as I started to pursue YouTube. Once I kind of am able to build a certain level of people who want to watch, I should be able to start doing Amazon influencing and Amazon reviews, which I'm looking forward to some extent, but I don't even know if it'll be worth it. I don't know much about it. That was just something I thought I would get into, as the Amazon reviews, because that just seemed like something I would be good at. I enjoy doing things like that where I can give an honest opinion on something. So that's something that I am going to continue to look into. But right now I can't do it because I don't have a good, I guess, following. But either way, even if that doesn't work, I'm really excited to be here on YouTube, because I heard that a lot of people can do really great things on YouTube, and actually I really enjoy it. I don't know, I guess I was really nervous about getting into it because I'm a very private person. I don't like people being involved in my business. So it was very uncomfortable for me to get into doing YouTube videos. But that was kind of where I ended up, and here I am making YouTube videos. And it took a lot of kind of allowing the Lord to lead, I guess, is the answer. Letting him kind of do his thing, because I feel like the more I pursue the things here, kind of the more blessings will flow in, because I don't know, I had a really hard time for a long time getting stuck in my own head, getting stuck in what I thought, and it was just not a good thing. So here I am, getting out there, getting over my anxiety, getting over my discomfort, and just going for it, because at the end of the day, I can't assume what other people are going to think. I can't assume what anybody's going to feel or whatnot. So I had to get over the idea of, you know, what people might think, what people might say, all that. So what I wanted to talk about, so that was kind of what I'm working on to try to bring in an income. I don't know when the income is going to actually come in, because I feel like a lot of the things I pursue, they take a lot of patience and just consistency. And I'm not always very good with consistency, but I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna get it. So that was all that. So what I wanted to kind of touch on is that for me lately, the last few weeks, I've been feeling very discouraged, both in posting, both in life, just in general, feeling very discouraged. But I was reminded about how consistency and obedience to just show up is so invaluable. And just because you don't see the just because you don't see the fruit of it yet, doesn't mean that it's not coming. It doesn't mean that you're not going to ever get it. And that's something that's really hard for me, because I tend to get really inconsistent when I don't see the fruit pretty quickly. And I eventually came back to the fact that that is my anxiety. I feel like I struggle often with anxiety. So I just feel like I never will obtain the fruit of the labor, so to speak. And I mean, I'm going back to the garden, because for me, the garden is like, it's a big part of my life. So for me, when you plant a seed in the soil, you don't immediately reap harvest. You don't immediately get the fruit. It usually takes a couple weeks, couple months before you actually get to eat something off of that plant, if you get to even eat something off that plant. And that's kind of that's something, I feel like a lot of the things the Lord is kind of leading me to are these things that are intended to kind of grow my patience, my trust, to wait. So gardening is one of those things. I had a really hard time waiting. And what he showed me is that if you put a seed in the ground, we oftentimes are so enthusiastic and so excited to see the seed come, like the plant come out of the seed in the ground. But what we're unaware of is how much growth is happening under that soil. We always feel like it's never going to come, like the seedling is never going to pop up. And then when it does, there's so much excitement. But something that we're missing so often is how much growth is actually happening under that soil. The roots are growing. The plant has started to grow. It just hasn't popped up through the soil. So we're looking forward to the plant popping out, but we're missing how much growth is happening under the soil, and it's because we can't see it. So something that I found, that it's really important to recognize that there's so much growth happening even if we can't see it. Oftentimes there's more growth happening where we can't see it before we even see it, if that makes sense. So something I found for me and my husband is that we tend to jump from one extreme to the next extreme. And that's what's really hard in this season, is that we jump from one extreme to the other extreme. And although through the eyes of faith, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, I am still sitting in the tunnel. I'm standing in the tunnel. So the only way to truly get to the end of the tunnel is to get up and walk, right? And getting up and walking a lot of times just seems more difficult because I get so caught up in wanting someone else to come and help me, wanting someone else to come and walk for me, so to speak. And at the end of it all, it's just about that consistency. Something we figured out about ourselves is that whenever we would sit down to talk about our finances, we would just get super overwhelmed and anxious, and we would just start to feel like it was hopeless. But something someone said recently that really kind of shook my brain a little bit is that oftentimes money problems is not a money problem. Oftentimes money problems is a relationship problem. And that kind of was a different perspective I never really considered. So when I had brought up that point to my husband, we started to reflect on ourselves and kind of in our relationship, and we realized that we really struggle with anxiety. And because of that anxiety, we tend to bounce from one extreme to the other extreme rather than trying to patiently kind of work through things. We either are on the spectrum of fully suffering or on the spectrum of just living it up, so to speak. And so that was something that really came to light with that new perspective of it's not really a money problem. And I've heard it before said through Dave Ramsey, it's not a math problem, it's a hope problem. So once we realize that we are dealing with a lot of anxiety and stress, it kind of helped us open up that atmosphere of conversation where we started to talk about kind of what the Lord was doing for us personally, and started to talk to each other about kind of what we were going through, as a couple. And in my time with the Lord, I felt that there was this idea that he was trying to help me understand, was the power of slowing down and digesting. And I was like, I don't really understand what that means exactly. But I got the idea, but I didn't know how to implement it, I guess. And my husband, when I had told him that, he told me in his time with the Lord, he felt the Lord really pressing on his heart the word moderation. And it's so funny how simplest of things become so complicated when you're just full of anxiety. It's funny, but it's sad because it's true. So he told me moderation. That is the key. And I felt like that was kind of the missing piece for my puzzle of understanding what it means to slow down and digest. Is moderation, is to gradually take things in and allow it to digest. So we had decided that instead of trying to work on our money problems, we would work on addressing our anxiety and start to practice things in moderation. So what moderation means for us is to allow ourselves the joys so that we can tackle the hardships. We spent so much time denying ourselves anything good because we thought that we didn't deserve it. Debt has a really funny way of making you feel like a failure. According to Proverbs 22, 7-9, debt makes you a slave to the lender, but it also talks about reaping what you sow. So we are reaping debt and being slaves because of what we planted in the first place. So before we can reap financial freedom, we have to sow moderation and contentment. So I have noticed, and I know that many others have noticed, how moderation brings contentment. And it's a really simple concept, but it's quite amazing how difficult it seems, and it can be. So as a family, we're going to go ahead and practice moderation. And we know that that'll be kind of difficult for us, but that's what our focus is going to be, is pursuing moderation. So our goal is to break the idea that when we are debt free, we will be happy, and to bring in the idea that we need to find our joy right now so that we can address our debt. And that's going to be a challenge, but at the same time, that's what we know will ultimately help us to push through it. Because if we can find our joy right now, then we will have the energy and the strength to be able to look at our problem, so to speak, and tackle it as a team, really. And so that was one thing that became really clear to us recently, was that simple phrase, that simple phrase just really changed our perspective, was that money problems is not really a money problem. Oftentimes it's a relationship problem. And that was just kind of groundbreaking for us, because we never thought about it that way. And I mean, I've heard something similar a multitude of times, but it just never really clicks. You know, sometimes it takes a long time for things to click, and that's totally God's timing on all of that. Sometimes it's quick, sometimes it takes time, and that's totally God's timing. Oftentimes there's a lot of things that just don't really make sense until the Lord makes it make sense, so to speak, and opens up our minds and our hearts to receive it. So that's something I've learned, is that I just patience is it's so funny the way that whenever the Lord says something, oftentimes what happens next is like, it feels like the opposite of what you feel is coming, what you know is coming. But those seasons are just meant to lead you astray, and it's intended to build your patience and to build your faith and trust. And so in the waiting season, if we fall into this place of this victim mentality where we feel like it's never going to get better, nothing's going to change, and wait for someone else to fix it, then ultimately nothing's going to happen. But something so amazing happens when in that waiting season we spend time with the Lord and we get to know Him and who He is as a person. Something changes, because when you start to know Him as a person, you start to build this faith and this trust, and you know that what He said will come to pass, even though it's not right here, right now. It's going to happen just in the future. And that's okay. That's okay. Because ultimately He does not want us to perish, to fall apart, to self-destruct. Because I know that if He gave me everything that He has promised, everything He has said He wants to give me, that I would fall apart. I would completely self-destruct if He gave it to me right here, right now. So I'm going to practice patience and moderation, and I'm just going to keep showing up. I'm just going to keep showing up, because at the end of the day, that's all I can do. And trying to control all the factors that I can't control is just ultimately going to make it harder for myself and everyone involved. So I'm just going to show up. Here I am, showing up. So yeah, I think that's about it. That's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you in the next one. And if you have a moment to subscribe and like, I would really appreciate that. So I'll see you in the next one. Bye.